had a woman come to me who sat down and explained to me that she was being abused by her husband. She had a couple of children and she had nowhere to go. She just didn't know what to do. I took her into my school and I trained her. Her husband had come home drunk and tried one of his nonsense things to beat her up, and she wound up beating the you-know-what out of him. Everything went different this time. And subsequently, he learned his lesson. He gave her a divorce. I am proud of what I do. It's a way of life, not just what I do. It's what I am.
I actually met Sensei 25 years ago when I was in high school. I remember going, being from Long Island, I was just traveling around with my dad actually trying to find self-defense schools, and went to Shima, which is in Deer Park.
We were there for, I don't know, 30, 35 years. And we moved 3 times, but right in the same 1 or 2 block area.
I then reunited with Sensei again in 2008. I Googled Sensei and I found out he was working at the Department of Probations in New York City. And turns out he was teaching privately in Brooklyn, Brighton Beach.
I did martial arts for many years and I was kind of looking to start something up again. And somebody approached me and said, "Hey, did you know there's a Jiu Jitsu class like just a few blocks from here?" So I watched the class a little bit, and my first impression was this is not at all what I was expecting. There was no exercising. There was no ground fighting. There was no what I would have thought as to be Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is what I thought it was. There's nothing like that. And so at first I was very skeptical. I was like, what is this?
As soon as I move, I'm getting that reaction, but when I move soft like that, and you see that, just soft. I could stand here and take his eye and he'll just watch that.
One big hurdle was the instruction, just the method of instruction, a lot of talking. It was almost lecturing, and I would say more than equal parts, more lecturing than physical techniques.
I've seen a lot of YouTube videos of these guys who have like their magic tricks, so I thought like, oh great, I wound up in one of these places now.
Jiu-Jitsu is a well-rounded system that if you're going to talk about self-defense, it covers the totality of it. It wasn't until much later in life that I realized that even Jiu-Jitsu had major limitations in it. There's a difference between doing fancy movements and reality. I was born in uptown Washington Heights, near the George Washington Bridge. My parents were Jewish and my parents came from Germany. They fled the Nazis. My father was actually in a concentration camp, but fortunately he was in the early days and got out. My grandparents didn't make it out. They perished in Auschwitz. The Holocaust shaped me forever. That's always on my mind. I'm aware of anti-Semitism. I was aware of that when I was a kid. And when I was a kid, I was bullied. That was my first lesson in you have to fight back. You can't take it. Shima means in Japanese, means little island. In Hebrew, Shima, which is very close to Shema, which is the first word in the most famous prayer in Judaism. And my Hebrew name is Simcha. And Simcha is not that far of a stretch from Shima. Shima, Simcha, it's pretty close. And so I've kept that name, and now I call my system the Shima system of self-defense.
about 45 miles from the Long Expressway to the Cross Island, Southern State Belt, all the way into Brighton Beach. About an hour and a half going, sometimes 2, and about an hour and a half to 3 hours coming home, depending on construction and traffic. I've been doing that since 2008, so about 4 or 5 times a month in the last 10 years.
You said you want money, right? Okay, I have money right here.
Been to many different schools. Sensei actually encourages that, so you can kind of see the difference firsthand, and there's nothing else like it, so I have to make that trip. So Sensei is 71, and I hope when I'm 71 years old, I'll be in the same shape that he's in. So he travels twice a month from South Carolina.
Sold a house in Long Island and made a deal with my wife. Started having classes again in the apartment. Look, I don't want any trouble, please. As a matter of fact, I'm going to give you the knife, and I'm going to give you money too. There it is, and now the gun, and now I got both of you.
So there are a few things I think that make Shima Jiu Jitsu, this style, unique. One is this near obsessive focus on efficiency, just looking and examining and re-examining any wasted movement in how we react and respond to a wide variety of situations.
To get a student to the level that I'm talking about, they have to learn blocking to gain a certain understanding and comfortableness and confidence.
We really think about the opponent and the opponent's mind. We really take the time to pick that apart and tease apart what does that really mean to be squared off with somebody, for somebody to be attacking you.
You can't take the knife out this way, but you can go this way.
This art is based on the principle that all strength and speed, all physical movement, is controlled by the mind. If we can interrupt that thought process, then we can have a certain amount of control over the physical movement.
He was so involved looking at this knife that he never saw me with this hand. He never saw me take the gun.
I never thought of, fighting or self-defense in this way before. It was a very unique perspective, and I found it to be quite interesting. I did Shotokan karate for over 10 years. I competed on a national and international level. It's very rare that you get that one clean shot in and the fight is over. We don't rely on striking. We say we have to control the person and stop them from being a danger. The moment he explained it in detail, I was like, oh, this is something absolutely unique. I need to investigate more.
I retired from MMA, and I was here at Myrtle Beach working for a company called Knight Rider Jewelry. Steve and his wife came walking up, and he had this real quiet demeanor about him. Like, his wife was talking to me a lot, and he was just kind of observing.
So I come back to the booth, and this humongous guy, young, in phenomenal shape, says to me, so I heard you're a grandmaster in Jiu Jitsu. He says, what's your specialty? I said, my specialty is self-defense. And he said, oh, I do self-defense. I said, no, you don't. If I could teach you, not just show you, but teach you how to do it, would I get a discount? He said, of course you would.
This old man, like, what is he gonna do? Like, I'm gonna thump this guy.
And I went in, and in 2 seconds, I had him in submission.
He subdued me to a point where he had the upper hand, and it was for me, it was pretty eye-opening, because he's not as big as me, he's not as strong as me. Whatever, it is what it is. Like, he did what he said he was gonna do.
And that just became, he was blown away, and he's now a lifelong friend. And I got the jewelry at a great discount.
I worked, actually put 31 years in the Suffolk County Police Department. Most of the time I worked in an undercover capacity. And the art helped me out tremendously with that. I know Steve about 40 years. District attorney that I worked with in the Suffolk County District Attorney's office was coming out of the dojo. He says, I gotta tell you something. He says, the guy I'm training with, he's absolutely amazing with the stuff that you're involved in. You really should go talk to this guy.
When they turned around and told me that what I did was incredible, and they'd never seen anything like this before, I was actually blown away, because in those days, I just thought that they had this kind of training.
Richard Dormer, who later became the Commissioner of Police, and I brought him down, and he saw it. And he was amazed, and he really got involved in this.
He wrote a letter recommending me. He had seen my demonstration, and he even wrote, I quote, that he witnessed techniques that were absolutely controlling, and he recommended me to the academy. So that didn't work out. Probation was hiring in the city, and I had the college degree and the requirements for it, and there was no age limit. I applied to the city, and I became a probation officer.
Very dangerous. It's a warrant squad. That means, in other words, they got warrants and they're going through doors. You never know what's on the other side. So for those guys that have Steve Isaak with them, they're very fortunate.
This is not meant to be any kind of a put down on any of the people that trained me. They didn't have the practical street fighting behind them that I subsequently wound up having when I got involved bouncing for 8 years, fights every night that I had to handle, 20 years in a warrant unit, making arrests. So I've actually created a whole new art from the logic and from the principles that I originally learned. I had a situation one night where a close friend of mine actually got into a situation where a bouncer in a disco, this was up in Comac, Long Island. Well, it turns out that the person that he went to beat up was Ralph Macchio's brother. Ralph and his brother were students of mine when they were children, but I didn't know them, of course, then. They were just in my kids' class. His brother, Stevie, comes to me one day and says to me, he's up for a part in this movie that's a big movie, and he would like to do some training with you, the purpose being that if he could look good on the audition and look like he doesn't have to learn techniques, he just has to look like he could learn techniques and do well. I subsequently met Ralph, and we hit it off well together, and I worked with him for about 2 weeks, and the rest of it's history. He went off to Hollywood, and The Karate Kid 1 came out. Yeah, I was very proud of him. I mean, that was great.
I've been in situations on the street. The art helps you look at a situation clearly, and it helps you by removing your ego from the situation.
To focus on the mind and the role of the mind in a physical altercation. It's like the moment you say it, it's like, okay, sure, no problem. Well, what else you got for me? But it's like, well, hold on a second. That's a big deal. So let's unpack that. And I've spent 11 years unpacking it, and there's a lot to unpack.
We don't have the standard technique training for half an hour and then 5 minutes of self-defense training. From beginning to end, everything is, here's a situation. What are the different ways of handling it?
A lot of times he'll go over things that happened on the news, for example, muggings or just attacks.
And the situations are such that are completely unique from anything that I have even heard of anyone else discussing.
Freeze, don't move.
No problem. Look, I have money for you. I have money for you.
Don't move, don't move.
No, listen, fine.
3 people attack you, you're getting mugged. One of them has a knife, one has a gun. How to deal with that?
The guy has a knife on your wife. You're 10 feet away. What do you do?
It's all real life, real world situations.
There's no uniforms, there are no belts. In fact, he insists that you wear the same clothes that you would wear on the street.
I'm in IT. I have classmates who are lawyers. I have been in class with police officers.
It's not about your physical strength or size or whatever. All of that has nothing to do with self-defense. So if I just go up, over, effortless. So in 2 seconds, you don't get out of breath. You don't need to be in shape. You handle it, it's over in 2 seconds. One of my students was traveling in Jerusalem and wound up, an Arab jumped out in front of him and attacked the policeman and was stabbing him to death. My student saved that policeman's life.
What amazed me is that the instinct that I had was to run and save him and do something because someone needed help. Because the instinct of a person is to run away and not be able to do anything. I knew that I'm trained for this. I know what I have to do.
We spend a tremendous amount of time learning physical techniques for every kind of situation. You learn how to not have the fear ultimately guide every movement that you're making. For that, you got to be a thinking man. That's more chess than the physical, which is more checkers, I would say.
My wife is very special. She is like no woman I've ever met in my life. From the day that I met her, we just really haven't been apart. I thought when I retired from probation, I was going to Myrtle Beach and that was going to be it.
Words that come to mind are an old school guy. You don't get the sense for even a moment from him that, the best days are behind me and now I guess just age gracefully and, wander off into the sunset. There's just none of that.
I care about my students, every one of them. I got to tell you, I love what I do. We want to get to an end point. An end point would be to put them into submission, like an armbar on the floor. I am better than I ever have been, and I can do less. So I'm not going to stop.
For me, Sunday, Thursday, my family and everyone knows where I'm going to be. So I hope that's not going to change anytime soon.
As long as there's two people left on the face of this earth, there's a need for self-defense.